My garage feels and smells like a tire shop. Well, there's my workout for the day. Today, I've got two different size tires, a 265/70 R17 and a 285/70 R17. And can you tell what my favorite brand of tires are? Because both of these are BF Goodrich KO2 all-terrain tires, and they're both low range C. Now, when it comes to the Toyota Tacoma, these are two very popular tire sizes. The 265 tire I have here today is about, and I mean this is an approximation, 31 inches in diameter, whereas this 285 is nearly 33 inches in diameter. Now, what makes these two tire sizes popular amongst the Toyota Tacoma community? Well, if we're talking about the 265 over here, a 265 is actually the stock tire size on the 3rd gen TRD Tacoma trims. It fits on the stock suspension and stock configuration of the 3rd gen Toyota Tacoma without any modifications, and people typically don't have issues with 265s rubbing on different components when they're in full turn. It's also a great size tire for off-roading while maintaining driving performance on road. Now, the 285 here is slightly larger than the 265 tire, of course, but it's liked amongst many Toyota Tacoma owners because of its aggressive stance it gives the truck. A tire this size will also give your truck better off-road performance when compared to a 265. But it's also not substantially large to the point where it makes it difficult to fit on these trucks. Fitting 285s isn't too bad on the Toyota Tacoma. Now, why do I have these two tires with me today? Well, it's actually not just to make a comparison video for you guys. It turns out my own Toyota Tacoma is actually in need of some brand new tires. My current tire setup are 265/70 R17 BF Goodrich KO2 low range C tires, which, if you're paying attention, yes, that's the exact same as this tire right here. And I'm changing them out because I've driven over 50,000 miles on them, which is what you're expected to get out of these KO2s. And while they definitely got some life left on them, there is a little bit of minor chunking. They're definitely worn after all these miles over the last almost 4 years, and they've seen better days. Now, they've served their purpose, and I've gotten what I wanted out of my own set of KO2s, and obviously, I've had a positive experience with them, hence why I'm going with the exact same tire all over again. But today, the question is, for the next 50,000 miles, should I stick with the 265 size or should I move up to the 285s? So with all that being said, I thought I would make a video for you guys here on my channel comparing 265 and 285 size all-terrain tires, specifically talking about the pros and cons. And while I won't be revealing which of these tires I'm going to be installing on my own Toyota Tacoma, sorry guys, you're gonna have to wait for the future video on that. I do want to hear what you guys have to say in the comment section down below. You can leave a comment about what tire you think I should go with and or what you think I'm gonna end up going with. All right, so I've got my 265/70 R17 KO2 right here, and let's go over some of the pros with this size tire compared to a 285. Now, I think the biggest thing that people like in the Tacoma community about 265s is that they will fit on these 3rd generation Toyota Tacomas with the stock suspension, and they won't cause you any rubbing issues. If you're a recent viewer to the channel, you may know that I've done quite a few suspension modifications to my own Toyota Tacoma, but before any of the suspension modifications long ago, I had KO2 265 size tires. So on my stock TRD off-road suspension with no lift, these exact tires fit. I didn't have any issues of rubbing even when I went in dips in the parking lot and I was on full turn, and I didn't have to do a cab mount chop or a body mount chop or make any modifications to get this specific tire to work. Now this one's gonna sound really obvious, but you're going to get better gas mileage with this tire when compared to the 285 counterpart. From my own experience, tires play a big part in determining what gas mileage you're gonna get, but of course your driving style, driving conditions, whether you're driving in the city or highway, those are all factors that affect gas mileage as well. But if we isolate out the tire size, the smaller tread tire and tire that weighs less is going to perform better in that respect. It should be noted that this specific KO2, this 265/70 R17 low range C tire weighs 47.5 pounds alone, so without the wheel, whereas the stock tire that comes on the TRD Off-Road and TRD Pro that is very similarly sized, it's also a 265. It's a Goodyear Wrangler, and from what I read online, it weighs 39 pounds without the wheel. If you're considering stepping up to an all-terrain or KO2 specifically from the stock tires, consider the weight. Even though it's true, and I said that one of the pros to choosing a 265 is how light it is compared to the 285, this KO2 in this load range specifically is much heavier than the stock tires, which kind of throws the lightweight argument out of the window completely. Speaking of weight, something I really like about these 265 size tires is that I can pretty easily change a tire myself. As you start getting bigger and bigger tires, your tires are getting heavier and heavier. And something to consider is that if you're driving alone, can you change the tire yourself, or do you need 2 people to help you lift the tire? I always wanted a wheel and tire combo that was light enough that I could change myself without any big struggle, and this 265 isn't that heavy for me. I know I keep talking about weight, but it's really an important factor in my opinion when choosing a tire for the Toyota Tacoma. But another benefit to 265s versus 285s is that they'll put less wear and tear on your drivetrain components, including your axle and your wheel bearings. There are a few negative things about these 265s if we're comparing them against their 285 counterparts. For one, because they've obviously got a smaller tread, you're going to get less traction with these both on and off-road. Now for off-road, I'll have to say the traction benefits make all the difference. I have wheeled again with 285 size KO2s on a Tacoma versus these 265s. And I feel so much better driving in the 285s when it comes to off-road. Don't get me wrong, I love off-roading with these 265s. You guys see most of my off-road videos where I have a ton of fun and I'm on these tires. But when it comes to wheeling, I pick a 285 any day over these 265s, honestly. There's a big difference when it comes to traction on road, believe it or not. And I'll say that the one thing I don't like about KO2s on road is that when it rains, I feel like I'm slipping and sliding and I'm hydroplaning a little bit more than I should. Seriously, it's been raining a ton in San Diego. Well, relative to what a ton of rain here normally is. I drive really carefully and often in four-wheel drive actually because I feel like the KO2 isn't the best in rain. I've said this in other videos too, that I think this is because of the tread pattern. While great for things like sand and snow, water gets trapped in these tread blocks, and because it can't channel out as easily, it creates a really slick surface when you're driving in the rain. Now thankfully, I don't live in an area that gets a lot of rain, but when it does, I really feel like I'm slipping everywhere on these 265s. So the 285s are gonna give you a minor advantage because you're going to have a little bit more traction, but sometimes that can make all the difference. Going back to talking about off-roading in these tires, again, these are very capable, but you can't beat larger size tires when you're going off-road, and 285 makes a big difference. I always say this in my video, but with the 285s, your holes become smaller, you've got a wider contact patch that gives you more traction, and because the diameter is slightly larger on the 285s compared to this 265, you also gain a little bit of a minor lift. Alright, so now I've got my 285. So what are some of the pros when comparing them to the 265 that we just talked about? Appearances can be subjective, but I think most of us would agree that this 285 looks better on the Toyota Tacomas than the 265. Bigger tires just make the truck look more aggressive. They give the truck a better stance. Some people say that 265s don't fill out the wheel well enough on these 3rd gen Tacomas, and 285s fit the bill more appropriately. Everyone builds their truck differently, and I'll say that personally, I'm not really someone who typically puts form over function, but there's no denying that 285s just look great on these trucks. In the 50,000 miles I've driven my truck with 265s, anytime I come across a Tacoma with 285s, especially if they're KO2s, I always think, wow, I wish my truck had 285s.
Now, I already talked about the off-road benefits of a 285 compared to a 265, but just to reiterate, off-road ride quality is better in the 285s. For me, I can honestly feel the larger tire absorbing more impact, so that's less stress on suspension components and also a more comfortable ride.
This also might be a minor one, but if you live in a city where there's lots of construction, or you just live on streets where there's a ton of different potholes, which I do, you feel the difference with 285s, and they're so much better. Compared to the 265s we just talked about that weighed 47.5 pounds, these 285 70 R17 low range C again weigh 50 pounds without the wheel. Here's the thing, even though the weight might not sound like a big difference on each of the tires relative to the 265, if physics taught me one thing, it is that static weight is not the same as rotating weight. Any extra rotating weight is going to put slightly more wear and tear on drivetrain components.
I want to revisit this for a second because earlier I mentioned the 265 counterpart weighed 47.5 pounds, which is obviously kind of close to the 50-pound weight of these 285s. So yes, there's a weight disadvantage with this specific 285, but I want to remind you again that this high 40s to low 50s pound category pales in comparison to the stock tire weight, which is again a much lighter 39 pounds.
When I've driven with 285s on road, I don't notice too much of a difference. It is subtle, but takeoffs are a little bit slower in these than the 265s.
I've also noticed quite a difference in braking power. It's slightly worse with these 285s.
When you're driving on hills, the transmission hunts more for gears than it does with the 265s. A lot of people are mixed on whether a re-gear is necessary or not. So that's a big thing to think about considering gears aren't cheap. The biggest hesitation I think people have, at least it was the biggest hesitation for me when I was trying to decide tires for my Tacoma, was fitment. How do I get these 285s to fit? Will they fit with the stock suspension without rubbing? How much of a lift do I need otherwise? I have a video where I talk more about this.
But to summarize, while it's not rocket science to get a 285 to fit on these Tacomas, you will likely have to modify your suspension setup to make extra clearance and prevent rubbing, because with the Tacoma as is from the factory, these 285s probably won't fit.
I think it's probably been done before with certain wheel combinations and probably removing the mud flaps and doing a body or cab mount chop or both. It's hard to say because everyone's setup is different, but what's worked for me in the past is leveling out a Tacoma. So basically the Tacoma comes raked forward from the factory so that if you put any weight in the bed, your Tacoma won't be sitting in the squatting position. But if you tend to not carry a lot of weight anyways, a lot of people, like I originally did with my truck, get some sort of leveling kit where they'll just lift the front of their truck about an inch, inch and a half. I installed a Westcott Designs TRD Pro lift, which is basically a lower shock collar that achieves that level lift on the TRD Pro, using a Method 703 wheel that has a 0 offset, which means the wheel causes the tire not to poke out too much or not to sit inward too much. I was able to fit 285 KO2s without removing mud flaps or doing any sort of chopping, and that was on full turns as well. But point being that there had to be some sort of modification done in order to get those 285s to fit. Also, if you're considering a wheel with a negative offset, or basically a wheel that causes your wheel and tire setup to stick out more towards the street, that sort of setup typically tends to rub a little bit more, and those are situations where you'll need to do a cab or body mount chop and or a lift. But again, every situation is unique and there isn't a perfect answer. So definitely talk to a lot of people, call your local off-road shop if you're considering putting 285s on your Tacoma and you're not sure if they'll clear. So given what you heard in this video, which size tire should I go with? Honestly, this is not an easy decision, and actually throughout filming this video, I had just like a conflicting mind of going, oh yeah, 265, no, 285, 265. I think I know what I'm gonna do to my Tacoma, but as you heard, there's pros and cons to both of these sizes. Anyways, in my upcoming video, I will reveal that decision, and in that video, I will also address things like why I stuck with the BF Goodrich KO2 brand. Did I even consider any other tire brands? Stuff like that. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you want to connect more with me, you can follow me on my Instagram. It is at ChloeKuoTaco. I post more in there on real time, but other than that, I hope I will see you in the next video. Bye guys.